Making an offer can feel like you're playing a high-stakes guessing game. You don't know what other buyers are doing, the agent's not telling the full story, and the fear of missing out makes it so tempting to go high.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to feel that way. Today we're lifting the curtain on the offer process, and we're going to show you how to approach it with confidence so that you can win that property you want without falling into the trap of overpaying. Welcome to Your First Home Buyer Guide, the podcast for first home buyers who want to become educated home buyers.
I'm Veronica and that was Meighan. We are two of Australia's most experienced buyer's agents and probably old enough to be your mum, which is a good thing because between us, we've got almost 50 years experience to share with you, and together we're going to cut through the BS and make sure that you're well informed so you make better decisions.
Now, when you get to the end of this episode, make sure you check out the website homebuyeracademy.com.au. Take a look at our course for first home buyers.
We've created an easy-to-follow course that builds on all of our professional experience to take you step by step through the whole home buying journey.
You'll know exactly what to do, when to do it, and be able to find your first home faster and easier with our guidance along the way.
It's the next best thing to having your very own buyer's agent.
Now, before we get into the interesting stuff, in this week's episode, there's the boring bit to do, and that's the disclaimer.
You, of course, know that nothing in this podcast is to be taken as personal advice. We always recommend getting the advice of an expert in their field who takes their time to personally understand your situation. Now, we've done our very best to ensure that the content is correct at the time of recording, but things change rapidly, so always check with the relevant government authority or your trusted advisors, or both, to get the most up-to-date information.
Today we're talking about the offer process. Making an offer can sometimes feel like you're going into a room blindfolded, but it doesn't have to feel that way. In this episode, we're going to shed light on some of the mysteries of the offer process so that you don't fall into the trap of paying too much. Now, the offer process is really the culmination of a lot of work. You don't just pluck a figure out of the air and go in there and make an offer, right? But in terms of the pay system that we teach in the First Home Buyer course, it is step 9, or part of step 9, right? I don't want you to listen to this episode and you know everything you need, because you will not, right? But what we are teaching you is, if you have ever made an offer or thought about making an offer and wondered why you suddenly realize you're in a vortex and you've got no idea what's going on, that's because you probably don't know a lot of this stuff we're going to talk about today.
Now, the first thing you need to know is that the rules are different in every state. So find out what the actual rules are in your state. That's step 1. Some properties are sold by private treaty, where you make an offer directly, while others are sold by public auction, where it's all out in the open. Then there are conditional versus unconditional offers, which can really change how attractive you look as a buyer.
So, and interestingly enough, I did say at the head of this podcast that we're talking about a part of step 9, and I referred to other steps in the process. The method of sale, which is step 6 in our process that we teach. It's so important to understand that, because that is an intrinsic, integral part of the offer process. And, you know, if people start walking into one type of negotiation thinking that it's a different type of negotiation, it's a little bit trying to play one type of football with the rules for another type of football. If you run on a soccer field and you've got AFL rules in your head, then you are going to be in trouble. Now, if you do not understand the rules in your state, you are already at a disadvantage, right? Too many buyers think it's the same everywhere. It is not. And even within a state, because there's different methods of sale, it is not. And even within a state that has this, or an area that uses the same method of sale, the different agents will have different rules. Right. So you really need to understand this. And when you don't know the rules, it's so easy to make mistakes that either cost you money or cost you the property altogether. So sometimes that's even worse. You could have bought it, but you didn't, because you didn't know the rules.
Didn't know the rules. Now let's talk about the other players in the room, the real estate agents. Their job's really clear. They're there to get the highest possible price for the seller. Remember, Home Buyer Academy, property principle number 1, the agent works for the seller. They're trained negotiators. They use tactics designed to get you emotionally engaged and bidding higher. And they will all have their own different ways of conducting negotiations. You need to find out what they are.
Yeah. And you know what? Even the bad ones, they do it more often than you do. So they just got more practice at it, right? And it is why you can't walk into this thinking that the agent is your ally, right? They'll be friendly and they're helpful, right? But their loyalty lies with the vendor or even with themselves, really. And once you understand their psychology, you can spot the games being played, like when they say, there's another offer, so you're going to have to increase yours. Might be a game, might not be a game.
We just recently did a podcast episode on that, so
We did.
check back a couple of episodes ago. Now, the best way to protect yourself is with solid research. If you know the recent comparable sales in your area, you'll know the value of the property. That way, when an agent suggests a figure that feels inflated, you can recognise it straight away.
Research absolutely takes the guesswork out. It really gives you such a good confidence in what's fair, right? And instead of making an offer based on fear or emotion, or you're anchoring your decision to what the agent is guiding or what the asking price is, instead you're anchoring your decision in the facts, the research that you've done. It really is one of the simplest and most powerful ways to avoid overpaying.
Absolutely. The timing of your offer is also quite critical. Sometimes a strong, confident first offer can put you ahead of the competition, especially if the seller is motivated. Other times, holding back gives you a chance to see how the field's shaping up before you make your move.
And this is where the strategy comes in, and all of that background work I mentioned. We get to the negotiation, you think, okay, it's just as simple as making an offer, but it isn't. You've been gathering intel the whole way, right? There is no one-size-fits-all approach, because you need to read the situation and choose the right timing for each and every case. This is why our weekly campfire with students is so valuable, because they can bring this stuff to us and we can work out a strategy with them to go ahead. Now, the more you understand about how agents and vendors operate, the easier it is to judge when to strike.
Yeah. And I guess, Veronica, you and I, as buyer's agents with many, many, many negotiations on our belt, we've got a whole toolkit of tactics that we use depending on what we find out during the whole process of gathering information leading up to the point of making the offer. So that's a toolkit that the buyer's agents often have. Now, people often assume auctions are scarier, and I've heard people say, I don't care, I'm not going to auction. But here's the thing, they can actually protect you from overpaying. Everything's transparent. You can see exactly where the bidding stops. You can pay just $1,000 more than the guy that underbids against you. You don't know that in a private treaty negotiation.
And that's the thing that a lot of people really underestimate, because private treaty, that's when you're making offers. It's not auction, you're just making offers. It's blind. If that agent comes back to you and tells you there's another offer, you can't see that offer. And even if there is another buyer, did they really tell you the same amount, the right amount? Now, obviously, in all states, they can't. Some states, they can't tell you the amount of that offer, but they can guide you as to where you need to be. And so you just actually don't know, and you can't see. And you have to make your own decisions with very imperfect information, right? It's very easy to get spooked into going higher than you should, just in case, or just to dig your heels in because you just assume that they're lying to you. And so that's where the auction can be good, because that transparency can work in your favour, can give you a lot more clarity and visibility so you can make clearer decisions.
Yeah. Negotiations can feel quite intimidating, especially for first-time buyers who are up against maybe investors or families upsizing. Or you might even be noticing there are more and more buyer's agents out there competing with you as well. But simple strategies like, never revealing your full budget. You've been clear with yourself about your walkaway price. This can give you power.
And remember, the confidence is key. If you appear uncertain or emotional, agents will push harder. If you look like you're going to crack, then they're going to
Find that little crack and they're going to open it up.
put a little leader in there and wedge it right open. There's a few agents in our area that are particularly good at nailing buyers' feet to the floor. Like, that's what we say. They're going to nail your feet to the floor. And the agents, some of them are very good at that, applying the pressure exactly the right way to get you to commit. But if you can show that you've done your homework and you can negotiate from a position of strength, even if you don't have the deepest pockets, those agents will deal differently with you than they will with someone they know that is a pushover.
Yeah. There are some red flags you need to watch out for. One of the biggest ones is when agents try and push you into making a best and final offer too early. It's a pressure tactic and it's not always genuine.
I've had buyers, agents sort of say they're going to do a best and final, And I'm like, and what happens then? And then then we're going to tell everybody.
Give them another chance.
And will you give them another opportunity? Yeah. And I'm like, that's not a best and final then, is it? False urgency is another red flag. If you're told you must act today or you'll miss out, that might be true, but it also could be a sign the agent is just trying to control the pace of the negotiation. And you really need to step back and assess whether that pressure is real or manufactured, right? So maybe it is genuinely going to sell quickly. You've got to ask good questions. So go back, listen to that episode, which is about maybe 5 back, where we did talk about a lot of the good questions to ask. Even better, join us, do the first home buyer course, and join us.
You'll have a list of questions.
We'll give you even more questions. But if you're keeping across the market, you're going to know how quickly properties are moving. You're going to have a much better gauge of it as well. So there's a lot of ways that you can build up your knowledge to give you the ability to really deal with an agent that is, using these bluffing tactics.
Yeah. The biggest mistake we see is emotional bidding. Buyers falling in love with the property. They throw logic out the window. I see it at auctions every Saturday. And this is when budgets are blown and regrets set in.
The amount of people that say to me, because I quite like to ask people if they've done it themselves, how did you come up with that price, or what made you pay that amount of money? And often people say to me, "Oh, agent told me I had to." And I'm like, oh my God.
Or the add 10% to the guide.
Well, there's that too. But, the amount of people though that's when we're negotiating on their behalf, and our clients will turn around and say, "Oh my God, I just would have paid that. Like, I would have paid that." And we're like, you didn't need to. We just saved you way more than our fee because we know how to deal with it. And I'm actually a bit surprised with that. So another classic mistake, you have to tell the agent information about your price range, but you have to be careful about telling them your exact budget. It's a fine line, right? And so sometimes people also will open their mouths about what they think a property's worth or what they're prepared to pay far too early before they've done any of their due diligence, right? So you just got to be careful about opening your mouth to agents, really. So you got to let them know you're interested without giving the game away, right? If an agent knows you got more money, well, they're going to push you, right? Which is another reason why you got to remember they're not on your side, right? But you do need to give them that guide so that they can tell you about upcoming listings. It is a balancing act, but it's another reason why being researched and really, really clear on the value of the property and what your limit is before entering into negotiations is so important.
Yeah. The good news is you don't have to stumble through this alone. When you have a clear step-by-step process, you take a lot of the guesswork out of making an offer, and that structure gives you confidence and keeps all of your emotions in check. That's what we want to do. You fall in love with a property if it's going to be your home, but then you have to switch on your brain, and your brain has to take over and keep your emotions in check.
Look, emotions are important when you're buying a home. And we're not going to say do it without emotion, because the fact is you will have emotions, right? So we want to give you some scaffolding so that you can let your emotions go free, but they don't shoot you in the foot. They don't cost you, right? So in our first home buyer course, we've laid out the 10 steps that you need to follow in the exact order so that you know how to handle every stage. It's about removing the sort of the chaos and confusion and panic and whatever, and replacing it with clarity. And that's what makes the offer process feel manageable instead of overwhelming.
Yeah, at the end of the day, winning a property without overpaying isn't about luck, it's about preparation. We did a great case study with a student who had just purchased in Melbourne, I think. That's actually a recent episode.
A couple of weeks back. Yep.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago. And she talked about how she felt that she was really lucky to have found this off-market property. But when we actually unravelled it, she'd done a lot of preparation to be in the position to find out about this off-market property, had followed all the steps and all the guides and everything we suggested to try. And so she was prepared when that opportunity was there. She calls it luck. I say that she'd put herself in the best position to be ready when the opportunity was there. And when you know the rules and you understand the agent's tactics and you've got a clear process, you feel so much more confident to move forward.
You know, and that confidence is everything, really. Inside our course, we give you the tools, the strategies, the step-by-step plan to make sure you're making smart offers, not emotional ones. And it's a classic because that was Louisa we were talking about. It was 2 or 3 episodes ago. And, you know, it's funny, we met her at Campfire every week for quite a while she was in that process. And there were some weeks where she was despairing about finding the right property. Was sort of making sure that her search was heading in the right direction. She was doing the right thing. She was such a diligent student. And I love the fact that when that property came up, she was all over it in terms of pricing. So she really understood value. So she was able to make that confident offer and not muck around and not second guess, just get in there and get the deal done. So if you want to have an experience like that, then we encourage you to do the course and check out the link in the show notes, because we would love to help you buy well, as did Louisa.
Too many first-home buyers are leaving money on the table and hurting their future selves because they don't know how to do things in the right order. That's what we do. We teach you the exact steps you need to take and support you along the way.
We help you move from a state of information overload to feeling excited and in control. You'll learn a clear step-by-step process that takes the guesswork out of buying your first home. You'll know exactly what to look for, who to talk to, and how to navigate every stage with confidence, avoiding costly rookie mistakes along the way.
We've created your first home buyer course, a 10-module self-paced course plus online mentoring. Now, the course only costs $990 and you get direct access to us every week. You can share the link of any property you're thinking of buying and we can help you work out whether it's an A, B or C grade or a no-go zone. We even help guide you through your negotiations.
Trust us, you will buy a hell of a lot better with our guidance, and you'll overpay a lot more than the cost of the course if you don't know what you're doing.
Thanks for joining us. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to join our Facebook group. It's called Your First Home Buyer Guide Australia, and it's your opportunity to connect with us and ask us your questions, which we will answer, meaning you can make sure that you're not getting led down the garden path. We hope to see you there soon.